the Baseball Together Network presents the North Chicago Baseball Together podcast with your host, Denise. And now, North Chicago Baseball Together.
Well, hello everyone. This is Denise, and welcome to my first podcast of 2022, covering the Chicago Cubs for our Baseball Together family. Before I begin, I wanted to let you all know about a discount that you can take advantage of just for listening to my podcast. If you listened last year, you're familiar with this deal. If you're brand new, I'll give you the specifics, but we're excited to bring this back for this season. So please take advantage of it. Our Baseball Together family has some merchandise that's actually pretty cool. Some of it's general baseball themed, some of it are specific to teams. So for you, there is a discount for all of the Chicago North merchandise. That's what we call the Cubs themed items. So if you click on the Baseball Together link in the description of this podcast page, it'll take you directly to our page with all of the Chicago North items. And honestly, you can look for other items as well if you want. But simply click on the item you'd like, choose your size if necessary, add it to your cart. Before you check out, make sure you enter the discount code of CUBPOD, that is CUBPOD, to save 15% off of your order. And you can use this code more than once, so feel free to make a wish list. I always have one. But again, that code again is CUBPOD. So the fact that I'm recording this means one thing. The lockout is over. We will have baseball, and more specifically, we will have Cubs baseball. I had originally planned to actually start my podcast back up like right before or just after spring training, like as they started reporting, which was like over a month ago. But here we are just about the end of March, and spring training is about a week in with games. Opening day has now been delayed by a week, which means the first two series of the season got rescheduled, but they do still plan to play the full 162 game season. So that's good. Originally, as the lockout kind of kept continuing, through the winter, Manfred started threatening that, we're going to start canceling games, regular season games, and we're not going to make them up. You guys aren't going to get paid, you guys meaning the players. They're not going to get paid for those missed games, things like that. And then after they canceled the first two series, like the lockout continued for like another week and a half. Then they canceled the first 2 weeks of the season. So, we're all frustrated. And then about a day or two later, they finally came to an agreement. And Manfred went back and said, okay, we'll fix this, we'll fix it so that you guys still get the 162 games and everybody gets paid and blah, 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 blah. So, I don't think the threat really worked, but because, the players, a lot of them wanted to play, it was the kind of the board on the union and stuff. But essentially we only lost the first two series. So they ended up, delaying spring training and extending it a little bit, into when the regular season was supposed to start. So the Cubs were originally slated to start on the road in Cincinnati for the first three games and then come home to Wrigley for two against the Cardinals. So those are the two series that need to be rescheduled. Actually, they did reschedule them. So what they did is they bumped the Cincinnati series all the way to the end of the season. So we'll actually close the season with a series at home against the Reds, and then we go on the road to Cincinnati and play another series. And then the two games against the Cardinals just got mixed into the rest of the season as part of day-night doubleheaders. Everything else remained the same. So as of now, we are now slated to open the season at home against the Milwaukee Brewers on Thursday night, April 7th. And I, of course, will definitely be there. So speaking of going to games, if you recall, towards the end of last season, I had mentioned how my place in line was coming up for being a season ticket holder. And I am pleased and so very, very excited to announce that I did, in fact, become a Cubs season ticket holder as of November 1st, 2021. I'm so excited. It's been 20 years in the making. I think this was my third go round on the list, and I was finally blessed enough to be able to purchase the tickets. And additionally, for new season ticket holders, they added a partial ticket plan. They had done away with like a nights and weekends package a couple of years ago, and you either had to buy the full season or nothing. But this year for new season ticket holders, they allowed us to do a partial plan, which we felt was very excellent to start with as being our first year. So we get half the games. We get 41 games. We get 40 games plus opening day. Have amazing seats in the fourth row of the upper deck in left field. We're on the aisle. We literally have a view of the entire field with no obstructions, and I absolutely cannot wait to go. So enough of that. Let's get down to some business here. I'm going to touch on a few things regarding the lockout, kind of interspersed. So first and foremost, the Cubs did make some moves both before and after the lockout. It definitely wasn't anything huge. Like, they didn't sign all the free agents, and I know we can't sign all the big free agents, right? We did make a couple of good signings, though. We definitely were not one of the top offseason spenders, but we did make some changes and fill some holes that we needed. So I'm going to start all the way back in October of last year after the season ended. And just keep in mind as I go through this, right? If you remember, a lot of players the second half of the season were AAA players coming up from the minors because we traded away the core after we all cried. We got rid of our big players, and it was a lot of AAA players. And while they were fun and exciting to watch, right, a lot of, people, if you don't follow the minor leagues, you're not going to know these names, right? So keep in mind that you might know some of these names and some of them you might not be super familiar with. So we designated for assignment catchers Tyler Payne and Eric Castillo, and then they were sent outright to the AAA Iowa Cubs. We activated pitchers Tommy Nance, left fielder Nick Martini, David Bodie, our infielder. You're all familiar with him. Patrick Wisdom, all from the 60-day IL. They were all activated. And then we sent second baseman Tyler Ladendort, center fielder Joneshwe Fargas, and right-handed pitcher Joe Biagini, all to AAA Iowa. And then we signed free agent shortstop Alejandro Rivero to a minor league contract. November started the free agency period, so this is where a lot of movement then started. We lost the following players to free agency. Infielder, mainly third baseman, Matt Duffy, he went to the Angels. Catcher Robinson Chirinos went to the Orioles. Catcher Jose Lobaton is still an unrestricted free agent. Pitcher Zach Davies went to the Diamondbacks. Pitcher Adam Morgan is on a minor league contract with the Astros, and pitcher Jason Adam is on the Rays. In addition, we also sent the following pitchers: Jonathan Holder, Cole Stewart, Adrian Sampson, and Rex Brothers, all to AAA Iowa, along with right fielder Trace Thompson, left fielder Nick Martini, second baseman Trent Giambroni, and catcher PJ Higgins. We then activated right fielder Michael Hermosillo, left-handed pitcher Brad Week, second baseman Nick Madrigal, and first baseman Alfonso Rivas, all from the IL. And I'll repeat these names because they had several movements with some of these players. They were kind of back and forth. So a lot of this is just the nuances of ending the season and the free agency period, et cetera, and going back and forth to the minor leagues. We did also sign a ton of minor league contracts, including pitchers Kevin Valdez, Jensei Ramirez, Eligio Paredes, Yafferlin Vasquez, Locke St. John, Jair Jimenez, and then again, Jonathan Holder, who I already mentioned. We signed him to a minor league deal. We also signed center fielder Narciso Cook, catcher PJ Higgins, and outfielder Nelson Velasquez, who's actually at Double-A Tennessee. We acquired right fielder Harold Ramirez from the Guardians for cash. And if you didn't keep up, the Guardians is Cleveland's new name. They got rid of the Indians. They are now the Guardians. And then the Twins claimed right-handed pitcher Trevor McGill off of waivers. So we lost quite a bit of pitching. A lot of them went back down to the minor leagues. But in a surprising move, we claimed left-handed pitcher Wade Miley off of waivers from the Reds. This kind of started the Reds' fire sale. before the lockout. And keep in mind that during the lockout, you couldn't sign any major leaguers. So November saw a lot of movement because the free agency period began and the lockout was, looming to start in December. So once the Reds did a huge fire sale after the lockout, but Wade Miley was the first one. They put him on waivers and the Cubs jumped on it. So he will pick up the remaining part of his contract, a 1-year, $10 million deal. So it's a decent pickup. It's got, some low risk, high potential, not all that horrible. He's definitely going to be a starter. And I'm going to fill you in later on why this ended up actually being a pretty important signing. And he threw a no-hitter last year. I mean, to be fair, everybody and their grandma seemed to throw a no-hitter last year, but, he did have that. He does have a career 4.15 ERA, but last year it was 3.37 with the Reds, and then he's got a 1.38 WHIP. And he has yet to pitch in spring training. I think he's going to start in like a couple of days, but this is kind of normal for veteran pitchers, right? John Lester did this a lot in spring training. John Lester was usually our number 2 starter, and he never pitched the second game of spring training. He was always off to a slow start. So, Miley's been doing some bullpen sessions, some throwing sessions, things like that. And I think he's going to start in a couple of days. So it's not unusual. It's not related to like an injury or anything. It's really not unusual for him to be like this in spring training. And I definitely see him as a starting pitcher, probably 3rd or 4th in the rotation. So December then started the lockout. But right before the lockout started, we did make a big splash on December 1st by signing another starting pitcher, right-handed pitcher, Marcus Strowman. He signed for 3 years, $71 million. It includes an opt-out after the second season, and he does have some bonuses based on innings pitched for those first 2 seasons. He's super energetic, super positive. I love following him on social media. He's very active. And I actually won a contest from his media team. So I got like a Stro Show shirt, and I got tickets to a game of my choice, which you might think is odd being that I'm a Cubs season ticket holder. But remember, I got a partial plan, so I don't get all the games. So I'm actually going to choose the game that's right on my birthday, since I didn't get that one in my season ticket plan. I got the day before. So now I get to go on my birthday. And it's against the White Sox, so they're playing the Crosstown Classic, so that should be fun. So anyway, along with Strowman, we also signed free agent catcher Yan Gomes, left fielder Clint Frazier, right fielder Michael Hermosillo. I said I mentioned him before. And pitchers Steven Gonsalves, Mark Leiter Jr., and second baseman Dixon Machado. Those were all on minor league contracts. And then the lockout began. And we sat and we waited. And there were no talks. They just sat idle in December, literally doing nothing. For weeks, they sat there. It ran through January. In January, we signed pitcher Eric Yardley and catcher John Hicks to minor league contracts. Now, remember, I said you couldn't sign minor or major league players, but you could sign minor league players. So while everyone kind of speculated, when is this lockout going to end? And when it does, where are the big free agents going to land? What trades are going to happen, etc. A lot of teams were still working on their minor league system. So in February, then the lockout still continued. They started picking up talks a little bit, meeting it felt like it was like every other week. It was ridiculous. And then we signed pitchers Matt Dermody and Kevin McCarthy again to minor league deals. And then at the end of February, MLB started delaying spring training, threatening the cancellation of regular season games as the league and the union kept going back and forth and on and on and on. So it's like, it was so aggravating, not only to myself, but like millions of other baseball fans. Like, dude, you guys had 6 weeks where you sat and did nothing in December and January, literally sat and did nothing. And then now you're all of a sudden trying to do a deal in like the span of like 2 weeks. And now it's like, oh, threaten, cancel the games. You're not getting played. It's, not going to get paid, etc. So it was super frustrating, from our end as fans. But finally, after 99, I think it was 99 long days, the lockout ended on March 10th, and there was joy again in Wrigleyville. I was in the office when my phone started blowing up that the lockout was over. I literally stood up at my desk and just said, baseball is back. And so we were all excited. You know, my group chat with my Baseball Together family was blowing up, super excited. And we had thought, you know, after the lockout ended, it was kind of like mid-morning or like late morning, early afternoon, something like that. And they said that free agency now will start later that night. And we're all thinking, oh my gosh, here comes the flurry of movements. My phone is going to be going ballistic tonight. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to keep up. It's going to be like the trade deadline, right? But it actually kind of stalled a bit. Like, it was like crickets. There were some small signings here and there, but the big names really took their time. The Cubs signed one of the biggest, though. Japanese league star Seiya Suzuki. Signed him to 5 years, $85 million. He ended up, it came out that he was like their prime target this offseason. Everybody's like, Carlos Correa, you know, get this guy, get that guy. And it ended up being Seiya Suzuki. And their target, like their planning actually spanned like 4 months. Apparently there was a meeting in Los Angeles. There was a secret trip to Wrigley. And he got some great advice from former Cubs pitcher Yu Darvish. Yu not only gave him some advice on how to adapt going from the Japan leagues to the, you know, the U.S. league, but he also told him, he put in a great pitch for, you know, the city of Chicago and said, you're absolutely going to love it there. And the Cubs fan base is great. You know, we've got a lot of energy. He's like, there's nothing like Wrigley Field, etc. So Suzuki ultimately chose the north side. So that was great. He plays right field, so that means Hayward's probably going to need to move, probably to center, and that's if he doesn't lose his job to Michael Hermosillo. But he does add some power and pop to his bat, which is nice because we've been signing a lot of contact hitters lately, especially after the trade deadline last year. So in Japan, he was a 5-time All-Star, and then last season they played 188 games, or he was in 188 games, right? I thought 162 games was long. 188 games last season. He hit .317 with 38 home runs and 88 ribbies. Now, I don't really expect him to kind of repeat or replicate those numbers as he adjusts to MLB. But I'm really glad we won this battle for now, and I'm really excited to see him play. He's another one that we haven't seen yet in spring training, and I think he starts tomorrow. I'm recording this kind of near the end of March, and I believe he starts like tomorrow or Saturday. So anyways, so after now the lockout's over, the movements really started coming in. I'm not going to go through everything that we did in March because it would literally take the rest of this podcast, and it's like 3 months worth, right? But we did have some signings and moves here and there. First and foremost, relief pitcher Cody Hoyer. We got him in a trade last year from the White Sox as part of the Craig Kimbrell trade. Unfortunately, he's going to miss all of this season and probably a little bit of next season. He had Tommy John surgery mid-March. So that's kind of a big hit in the bullpen. Brad Week went back on the 60-day IL with a left elbow strain. David Bodie ended up going back, you know, he's actually still on the IL, recovering from his shoulder surgery. If you recall, he dislocated his shoulder sliding into second. And then Tommy Nance is on the 10-day IL as well. We also lost Adbert Alzolay, another starter, to the 60-day IL with the lat strain, which he battled in, I think it was like 2018, excuse me, and a little bit last season. So we got 3 big pitchers on the IL, and one of which is a starter. So it's really not good. So I said before, this is where that Wade Miley signing coming off the waivers where they jumped on him ended up actually being really good because we now lost a starter, at least for a couple of months. So that ended up kind of being a big blessing in disguise. And then we signed shortstop Andrelton Simmons and Jonathan Villar. So that kind of put us out of the running for Carlos Correa. Pitchers David Robinson Robertson and Chris Martin, not the one from Coldplay, he's an actual baseball player. Daniel Norris, Drew Smiley was another nice pitching pickup. Adrian Sampson and Michael Givens. Shortstop Sergio Alcantara was DFA'd. Second baseman Robel Garcia, love that guy. And pitcher Robert Gesellman and Jesse Chavez were all signed to minor league contracts and invited to spring training. And then from the spring training roster, we've already made some movements. You start with a huge roster. You got to start cutting them down as we get closer and closer to the regular season. But we have already sent Alexander Canario to Single-A Advanced South Bend, Alexander Vizcaíno and Christopher Morel to Double-A Tennessee, and then Nelson Velasquez to Triple-A Iowa. As for the big names, most of them got signed. Michael Conforto's actually still out there. I'm a little bit surprised on that. We avoided arbitration with Ian Happ, and unfortunately, we could not avoid arbitration with Wilson Contreras. The Cubs have yet to extend him. There's really no reason. Wilson, from what I've read, Wilson asked for $10.25 million in arbitration. The Cubs offered $9 million. They're going to arbitration with pretty much who is left of the face of this franchise right now, the face of this team, over $1.25 million. 1.25, that's it. They're going to arbitration for this. It's ridiculous. This guy is going to be a free agent at the end of this season if they don't extend him or trade him at the deadline. And they're, like I said, it doesn't sound like they plan to do so. We haven't heard any rumors at all. So if he moves at the deadline or after the season's over, it's a free agent. And I just don't get it. I really don't. There's zero reason why we can't extend him. And there is zero reason why we couldn't offer that $1.25 million. I joked with my podcast guys and I said, that's like a summer day game in beer sales at Wrigley. I'm probably responsible for half of it. Not even kidding. So it's ridiculous. I could go on and on about it, but I'm not going to. So anyways, so looking at how I think the roster is actually going to play out, obviously Wilson's going to be our starting catcher with Yan Gomes as the backup. We do still have Miguel Amaya. He's probably going to remain in the minors. But again, if Wilson leaves, I wouldn't be surprised to see him up. At first base, we have Frank the Tank Schwindel. He is back. He should see most of the starts, and probably with Alfonso Rivas as an alternate. At second base, we have Nico Horner and Nick Madrigal. This is going to be a battle, and I think it's going to depend on who the starting pitcher is or if they use a DH. So as a side note, the universal DH is new this year. So the pitchers aren't going to bat unless they're chosen as a DH or a pinch hitter. So Ross may kind of swap them in and out between, second, DH, maybe put Nico at short, again, depending on who's pitching or who's DHing. And we also have Jonathan Villar, who can play second, short, or third. So he's kind of a utility infielder. I'm at shortstop. I'm guessing Andrelton Simmons is going to be the starter unless, again, Ross wants to put Horner or Villar over there. And again, that could depend on the pitching matchup. And then third base should belong to Patrick Wisdom. And again, we still have Villar as a potential backup. In right field, we're going to see Seiya Suzuki all day. Maybe some Shohei in there if Suzuki's off. In center, I honestly think it's going to be Happ or Hermosillo getting the nod over Hayward. And we do still have Rafael Ortega and Craig Diekman, but I think Diekman's going to get sent back to the minors. And we'll keep Ortega up. And then in left, I can see either Clint Frazier or Ian Happ. Harold Ramirez does play into this. He might be the odd man out. He was delayed getting to spring training, I think, just because of some visa issues. So it remains to be seen what Ross is going to do to start the season. MLB is actually expected to expand the rosters from 26 to 28 players to start the season because of the shortened spring training. And I don't think there's a limit on how many pitchers you can have. Like normally you can top out at 13 pitchers. So I don't know, I'm sure we're going to we get 2 extra players, and I'm thinking they're going to add an extra position player, especially with the addition of the DH now, and then an extra pitcher. And then for starting pitchers, we still have Kyle Hendricks, Justin Steele, and Alec Mills from last season. And now we've got Strowman, Miley, and Smiley. I think the rotation is going to be Hendricks, Strowman, Miley, Smiley, and then Mills and Steele kind of battling for that fifth spot. In the pen, we've got Corey Abbott, Scott Efros, Anderson Espinoza, Michael Givens, Braylon Marquez, Chris Martin, Daniel Norris, Ethan Roberts, David Robertson, Manuel Rodriguez, Michael Rucker, Keegan Thompson, and Rowan Wick. Now, again, we still have to make roster cuts before the season starts, so some of these guys are going to be sent to the roster. This is just who we have on our active roster right now. Some may come in for a long relief or a spot start. We saw Keegan Thompson do a couple of starts, so we'll see. But again, some of these guys will end up back down in the minors. So that wraps off our offseason moves and where our roster currently stands. Again, I don't have a ton of optimism, and I really wish I did. I do wish we had signed some other big free agents, but a lot of what I noticed is a lot of our signings were one-year deals. So it's kind of like a wait-and-see type season, and then if not, bring on 2023. Not that I want to rush through this season, but a lot of them were one-year deals, with the exception of, Strowman and Suzuki. They were our two long-term deals. Everybody else was pretty much they were either on the team or they were one-year deals. So to wrap up, I'll talk about some of the rule changes as well. I mentioned the universal DH already. Playoffs have now been expanded to 12 teams. Pitchers can remain in the game as a DH even after they've been taken out as a pitcher. They dubbed it the Shohei Ohtani rule. He's really the only one that this kind of applies to. Although I can't think of his name, it's totally escaping me, but there is a pitcher. He used to be on the Reds. I don't think he's on there anymore. He might be, but that guy's bat was ridiculous. And he was a great pitcher too, and he played the outfield. And then there's an extra runner. Unfortunately, that extra runner rule at second base in extra innings is back again, and they said just for this season, right? There was talk. It was originally brought in during the COVID shortened season to kind of speed up the games. They kept it in last year because we did start, the season with like the partial attendance and still all the COVID protocols. And there was talk when they first ended the lockout that rule was going to go away, but they recently brought it back again for one more season. So those are the rule changes for this year. And then starting in 2023 next year, now the MLB only has to give a 45-day notice instead of a year for any rule changes, but we could potentially see larger bases, the banning of the shift in certain formats. Like basically you need to have, like an infielder on each side of second base, right? So you're not going to have the second baseman, the shortstop, and the right fielder all sitting in right field. And then also adding a pitch clock. So those are rumored to start next year. So that about wraps it up. So, last year, my first podcast, I kind of did some quick division predictions, and I was about, was like 60% accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that again quickly. I won't go into all the detail that all the teams made because there was a lot of movement. This was one of the biggest free agent classes of the offseason. But in the NL Central, I still think the Brewers are going to take it with the Cardinals in second. Cubs are going to come in third. I previously mentioned the Reds. They had their fire sale, but I still think they're going to be better than the Pirates. So the Reds will take fourth and the Pirates in last. Pirates were one of the lowest teams spending in the offseason, and they're still one of the lowest in payroll, which is just, it's unacceptable. It honestly is. In the NL East, I still think the Braves are the team to beat, even with losing Freddie Freeman to the Dodgers, but they gained Matt Olson because Oakland had their own fire sale. So they gained Matt Olson. I think the Phillies are going to be in second. They added my boy Kyle Schwarber and Nick Castellanos this offseason. I think the Mets are going to be right behind them. Those two could potentially flip-flop. And then the Marlins in fourth, Nationals in fifth. In the NL West, the Dodgers simply got better. Like I said, they added Freddie Freeman. They were one of the biggest spenders. They've got the biggest payroll. And they're going to be the team to beat again. But I think it's going to be a toss for second between the Padres and the Giants. I think the Padres are going to edge them out this season, though. The Rockies will be in fourth. They actually added Chris Bryant to their roster, and I can't even make sense of that. And then the D-backs are in last place. In the AL Central, the White Sox are going to dominate once again. I still think this is like the weakest division. The Twins are the ones who actually nabbed Carlos Correa, so they could be a battle. I still think they improved quite a bit. And then you've got, I think, the Guardians in third, the Tigers in fourth, and the Royals in the basement. And over in the AL East, I actually think the Blue Jays are going to take it this year. That might be a hot take. It might not be. I'm looking for Toronto. They added Matt Chapman, Kevin Gausman, Yusei Kikuchi. But watch out. I mean, watch out for the Yankees and the Rays as usual. Rizzo went back to the Yankees. And the Rays, they added some power to their lineup as well. And some pitching. So I still think they go 2-3 though. Yankees in second, Rays in third, with the Red Sox in a close fourth. And the Orioles, I mean, they barely compete, and they're going to continue to do that. Again, they are I think they are the lowest payroll, and I don't even think they spent anything this offseason, which is, again, uncalled for, absolutely uncalled for. There's no reason for it. And then in the AL West, I still think the Astros take it. Even with the loss of Carlos Correa, you've got Justin Verlander back. They added some, other big, some other injuries kind of came back. I don't think they're going to take the AL crown, but I think they're going to take the AL West. And I think the Angels are going to come in second, maybe battle with the Mariners for third. Those two, again, might flip-flop. Rangers in fourth, Oakland in last because they had a huge fire sale this offseason. They dumped salary, didn't spend a penny. So that about wraps up my first 2022 Cubs podcast here for March. Remember, you can listen to all of our Baseball Together casts wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, rate, and review, share with your other baseball friends, and remember to click on the Baseball Together link in the description. Use that discount code of CubPod to save 15% off all of your Chicago North apparel. And as always, feel free to send me any questions, suggestions, topics, etc., and I will see you all in April.